Now, cats and dogs usually don't get along, but of course there is a cartoon in which some twisted animator has come up with a cat dog, which is pretty funny just when you think about it. But it's a hideous construct of two things that really don't go together very well, right? Well, that might be how you start to think of participles, because a participle is a verbal adjective. A cat dog. It's a part of speech that is part verb and part adjective. So which is it? It's both. As a verb, participles have tense and voice. And as an adjective, they have case, number, and gender. So when we start talking about participles, we will describe their tense and voice, case, number, and gender. Little creepy? Creepy cool. Now, the good news about the participles is that you already know almost everything you need to know to identify a participle. So we already know how to identify the tense of a verb. The same will apply to participles. And we already know how to identify the case, number, and gender of adjectives. So that will come into play as well. So the good news is, really, you know most of what you need to know already. Now, the bad news is that if you have forgotten some of this or maybe never learned it, it's going to come back to haunt you in the participle. You can think of the participles as sort of like a final exam, because they encompass everything we've learned all in one part of speech. So the good thing about that is they give us a chance to go back now and review and make sure we understand everything about the tense and voice, case, number, and gender. Now, in this lesson, what we'll do is first look at the grammar of the participle. In other words, how does a participle behave in a sentence? What is a participle, and what is it doing there in this sentence? And then the second thing we'll do is just take a quick little preview of how you form a participle. Then in the next 3 lessons, we'll look at them in detail. First at the present participle, then at the aorist participle, and finally the perfect participle. My wife is really into jogging, and she's trying to get me doing it too, and I have to admit it's getting kind of fun. Jogging is a great example of a participle. Jogging, a nice ing word. And I want you to notice how the word can be used in 3 different ways. You could use it as an adjective, you could use it like a noun, or you could use it as an adverb. So, if I say the jogging man, well, then that would be just an example of an adjectival use. I am the jogging man. You can see that jogging in that case is modifying the man. Or if I say jogging is great fun with my new shoes, in that case jogging is acting like the subject of a sentence. Or if I'm running along and I something bad happens, and if I say while jogging I fell flat on my face, you can see in that case it's acting like an adverb. So while jogging, I fell. It just gives me a little bit more information about the falling. I fell while jogging. To put that in a little less silly form, in a little table here for you, the adjectival usage is where the participle behaves just like an adjective. So in this case, we have the jogging man. Jogging is modifying man. I could just as easily have said the old man, or the bald man, or the young man. Take your pick. But you can see jogging here is behaving just like an adjective. Also, as we know with adjectives, they can act just like nouns do. So in this case, we have the participle behaving like a noun. Jogging is great fun with my new shoes. I could just as easily have said life is great fun with my new shoes. You see, jogging here is acting like a noun. This is the substantival use of the participle. And then because these participles are verbal adjectives, they can act like adverbs. So I might say, while jogging, I fell flat on my face. I could have used an adverb there for while jogging. I could have said, I fell flat on my face badly, or I fell badly flat on my face. You can see how that adverb there is used badly in the same way that while jogging is used. They both modify the falling. I fell while jogging. I fell badly. So we have the adjectival, the substantival, and the adverbial use of the participle. Here it is in Greek. Okay, so we have ha anthropos, ha pisteuon. The man, the believing. Now don't worry that you don't recognize this form yet. You will soon. But this means believing. So the man, the believing. We've seen that arrangement before in Greek to use an adjective where you have article, noun, article, modifier. The man, the believing just means the believing man. In any case, you can see how pisteuon here is used just like an adjective. In the second example, we have hapisteuon zese. The believing will live. Zese from zao, right? Means I live. So zese, notice the future with the sigma there. Third person singular ending, he, she, or it will live. So because we know it's a nominative singular masculine here, we could translate it, the believing man will live. Or the believing one will live if we want to not be sexist here, okay? But in this case, it is nominative singular masculine, so it's pointing to a masculine subject. But notice how hapisteuon in this sentence is acting just like it were the subject. Pisteuon zese, okay? And then the adverbial usage down here, we have hup egagon, which is from hup ago. It's a second aorist. It means I left. Look at your principal parts chart if you would like to confirm this. But it means I left, I went out, pisteuon eistein aletheon, in the truth. I went out believing in the truth, or I left believing in the truth. Can you see how believing here is modifying the leaving? I left. How did you leave? What was, tell me more about the leaving. I was believing in the truth, right? So in this case, pisteuon is acting like an adverb modifying a verb here. Hup egagon, pisteuon, eistein aletheon. I'll throw one more little detail at you, which becomes pretty important as we begin to translate participles. Don't worry, we'll encounter this again, but I want you to notice that the adjectival and substantival participle have the article here, hapisteuon here, or hapisteuon here. Now, normally, the adjectival and substantival participle has the article. Not always, but usually, you'll see the article with the adjectival and substantival usage. Now, the adverbial usage down here, you'll notice there's no article here. Hup egagon, not hapisteuon, no. Hup egagon pisteuon. And this is important to notice that adverbial participles in Greek never have the article. So that will help you out a lot in your translating. Let me point out to you that the participle can stand at the head of a whole phrase. And this is called, no surprise, a participial phrase. And it becomes a part of the whole participle usage. Let me illustrate this, okay? So used adjectively, I might say the man jogging, let's say on a cool fall day, in red tennis shoes, is very handsome. That's a matter of opinion, but okay. But here's what I want you to see. Jogging on a cool fall day in red tennis shoes. That is a participial phrase, and you can see that the participle there stands at the head of a whole phrase modifying the man. The man, jogging on a cool fall day in red tennis shoes, is very handsome. That's a participial phrase, so you have to get used to recognizing those, or you'll get really confused about participles. Here's an example of a participial phrase being used like the subject of a sentence. Now, before we said we could use jogging is great fun in my new red tennis shoes. So jogging here acting like the subject of a sentence. But that could be modified. I could say jogging on a cool fall day is great fun in my new tennis shoes. And again, this is the participial phrase acting like the subject of a sentence. And here's an example of a participial phrase used adverbially. Okay, before we said while jogging, I fell flat on my face. And we see that the while jogging modifies the falling here, okay? But I could say while jogging in my red shoes, I fell flat on my face. And notice here, jogging in my red shoes modifies falling now. Okay, so just pointing out to you that when you see a participle, look for some attached words that make a phrase that becomes either an adjective, it can act like the noun in the sentence, a substantive, or an adverb. Aren't they amazing? Participial paradise, man. As verbals, participles have tense and voice. Now, you could probably guess by now that since we're out of the indicative, time's not the issue, only aspect. And as we've been saying over and over, the present tense is used for continuous aspect, the aorist tense for undefined aspect, and the perfect tense for perfected aspect. So going to our old friend loosing, for example, the present would be translated loosing. And the aorist would be translated loosing. Now wait, you say, that's the same thing. Yes, it's the same thing. And once again, we have this problem where English doesn't have a way to distinguish between a present and an aorist form of the participle, which is why Greek is going to add some nice nuance when we see that something, hey, that's a present participle. You're talking about a continual loosing here. Or an aorist, oh, it's just undefined. You're just saying that the loosing has happened. Or a perfect participle, we would translate it probably having been loosed. Something happened in the past with effect that remains up till the time of the speaker and pointing onward. So, and again, there's really, having been loose doesn't really get that in English. So once again, as we're learning, the aspect of these tenses outside of the indicative are really interesting and very hard to capture in English. It's one of the benefits of learning to read Greek. So participles will have tense, our old friends, present, aorist, and perfect. They will have voice, active, middle, and passive. So using loosing again, active would just be loosing. Middle would be loosing for self, and again, not very common in the New Testament. And passive would be being loosed. And again, you can see that the English translations are the hardest thing there. Okay, so participles as verbals have tense and voice.
But wait, there's more. Walk with me.
Yes, I know. Hard to believe. There's more. Not only tense and voice, but also case, number, and gender. Now, this may blow you away a little bit because in English, there's nothing like this. Our participles don't morph around like this. But we should be sort of used to this, right? Because remember the article, the, in English? We use the whether we're talking about singular or plural or masculine or feminine or neuter, it doesn't matter. The man, the woman, the men, the women, the birds, the bird, always the. But in Greek, remember, we saw that there were 24 forms of the article. Why? Because the Greek modifiers change form to match the substantive that they modify in case, number, and gender. Because there are 4 cases, 2 numbers, and 3 genders, we come up with the potential for 24 different forms of every adjective or modifier. So, no surprise, there will be 24 forms of every participle. So, in English, just jogging, right? Jogging man, jogging woman, jogging children, jogging anything. But in Greek, we'll find that the participle will change its shape to match the case, number, and gender of the noun or the substantive to which it is attached. Briefly to show you this, notice in English, it's believing all the way down. Believing man, believing men, believing woman, believing women, believing crowds. The participle never changes form in English. But in Greek, look what happens when we change from man to men to woman to women to crowds. It's pisteuon, pisteuantes, pisteusa, pisteuusai, pisteuantes. So it's changing to match the noun that it modifies in case, number, and gender. Now, don't worry yet that you don't recognize perhaps all of these forms. We will soon. And you'll see that we really already know them. The main thing I want you to see right now is that Greek is doing what Greek always does with the substantives, with the modifiers. Modifiers change their form to match the noun that they modify in case, number, and gender. So we'll see how that happens in more detail soon. But the good news here, guys, we've already done it. You already know how this happens. If you understand adjectives, you understand how participles will change form to match in case, number, and gender. So the noun endings chart will be used to determine the case, number, and gender. And hey, good news, we already know the noun endings chart. So we're already good to go there. And when it comes to the tense and voice, the clues we have already learned will still be used. The present tense will be built on the present tense stem. In other words, if you look at it and you recognize it, it's probably present because it hasn't changed form. That's the one you learn when you learn the verb. The aorist tense will have our old friend sigma alpha or theta epsilon. Now notice in this case, it's not theta eta, which we were sort of used to here, but in this case, it's theta epsilon. So not theta eta, but theta epsilon. And then a stem change if it's in the second aorist, right? That second aorist tells you it's an aorist by changing the stem, not by the normal way of using a sigma alpha. But hey, that's all stuff we already knew about the aorist. And the perfect tense, guess what? Reduplication, kappas, and in the middle passive, no connecting vowel. Clues that we already know for the perfect tense. Now the voice of the participle won't be recognized by the personal endings, right? Because there are no personal endings with participles. So the voice of the participle will be revealed by the participle morpheme, which is a little connecting glob of letters in between the participle, which will make it very easy for us because they'll do two things. They'll say, hey, I'm a participle, and then they'll also say, I'm active or I'm middle passive. So more on that to come. I understand that when you open up the page titled Participles here and you see this sea of words and colors and you think, oh, we'll never learn all of this, you're just overwhelmed. Let me encourage you that it's not as bad as it looks. There aren't many words here, in fact, just a few. And as we've seen, every one of these boxes is a word, right? Why are there all these forms? Because they have to be able to be masculine, feminine, and neuter. All four cases, singular and plural. But this is just one word. And we already recognize these endings, and we already know how to tell the tense. So really, there's very little new with participles. If you've been understanding the verbs up to now, and if you sort of understood the substantives, then participles will really be pretty easy for you, I think.
Look, up there in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Well, it's not a bird or a plane. It's Superman, right? Okay. Look, oh, chitty chitty bang bang, our fine four-fingered friend. Is it a car or is it an airplane? It's neither. It's chitty chitty bang bang. Look, it's a verb. It's an adjective. No, it's a participle. The cat dog. The verbal adjective, which has tense and voice, case, number, and gender, and does wondrous things in the midst of a sentence, as we shall discover.